Hello and welcome back to another video for Final Fantasy XIV news with me, Meoni. Today we're looking at yet again another set of interviews. This time these are Famitsu published interviews with a number of members of Square Enix staff. This was in between various sections of the 14-hour live stream. Famitsu, which is an online publication and physical publication in Japan, obviously was invited over, and they usually get first-hand interviews with the team, including Naoki Yoshida, the producer and director, and all of the other story writers and sound designers and things like that. And Mkillerby here has translated and summarized some of the more interesting bits, the highlights. So we're going to read through this, but of course, massive thanks to Mkillerby again for the translation and posting this stuff. It makes content creation like this and reading out this information to more people easier, which is the whole point of this. So let's sit tight and have a look. So Yoshida and Foxconn, this is the focus on that interview, commenting on the milestone of 27 million registered accounts. Yoshida says that the team has never had a particular goal when it comes to this number, but thanks all of the Warriors of Light for making this number possible. Foxconn also comments that as global community manager, he has noticed an even greater variety of opinions and feedback from players, and he feels that compared to before, rather than one majority community, there are now many different sizable sub-communities within the player base. Well, that's very much true. The bigger your game gets, the more sub-communities show up. As we've seen, some of them negative, some of them overtly positive in places, but they exist regardless, and they do add to that player base, so it's only going to get bigger and more diverse. Next, on the idea of Foxconn's costume, if you weren't aware, he dressed up as a Leporit. Amazing, I know. The idea came from M-chan, aka Matsuda Now, the assistant producer. There were a few different candidates, but the theme for this year was to be cute, inverted commas. So Leporit ended up getting picked. Foxconn says that more than anything, he's glad to bring people joy with his cosplay. And I think, honestly, he never goes, half measures. He always goes full on. So props to him, honestly, for that. On the new Savage tier then, Yoshida says that based on listening to feedback from players and live streams, etc., many people challenge Savage for the first time with Abyssos. You might feel Savage is too difficult when you first try it, but eventually you get used to it. He says that since right now a very large number of people are trying 14 for the first time, it's almost a history repeats itself situation. Yeah, I can see that very easily. It is difficult to dip your toe into Savage and not get bitten. You know what I mean? Like my first experience of Savage was, ooh, this is hard. And then you get a taste of it. And then you kind of, at least I did. I got an interest to do more and more and more. And then it pulls you in eventually. You'll get there. Just keep on going. And the people that you go with is ultimately the biggest thing, isn't it? Regarding data center travel for Savage Party Finder, the situation with Japanese players traveling to Mana for Party Finder is broadly as the developers expected it, and the same situation hasn't happened to the same extent in other regions. He says he will continue to monitor the trends here in 6.3 and beyond. Island Sanctuary, Yoshida says there will be small changes such as UI updates in each patch. For major patches such as new buildings or, as announced in the live letter, allowing the placement of outdoor furniture will be once every 2 patches. Will the updates continue past 7.0? He says he will decide based on the player feedback. If people say they would prefer to expand the current island, the developers will keep on developing the current content. If people say that they want a second island, he wonders if they can find a second island, he laughs, end quote. So it doesn't look like they're throwing away the idea of Island Sanctuary. It's obviously been a huge success for them to be, based on feedback, shall we expand our island? Or should we get a second island? Can you imagine running 2 islands? I think Tataru's got that up her sleeve that we're going to renovate every single island in the entirety of the South Island. Oh dear. It would be nice to see some diversity. Hopefully, the more content they add to it, the more interesting it becomes, because a lot of people were slightly disappointed that you know, even though they rushed it, that they finished everything within a time period, and there's little for them to farm for apart from the rare animals. I know that's only the fault of the player, but it would be nice to see more. But every 2 major patches, we're going to get some new stuff and quality of life in between then. Very cool stuff. Can't wait for that. On the 10th of Realm Reborn anniversary next year, Foxconn and Yoshida hint at big plans for the next 14-hour live stream, the Fan Fest and other events. The operations and communication teams are currently at a stage where they're thinking, can we really do this? End quote. And that was the last little bit of information we got from them on this summary from Yoshida and Foxconn. So the 10th of Realm Reborn anniversary is going to be huge. I wonder what they're going to do. What can they possibly do? I don't know. I'm excited to see, but, you know, they never go, like I said before, the team never goes half measures either. They always go full on. Right, so this was an interview with Ishikawa, Oda, and Hiroi, which are, of course, the storyline scenario team. Sorry. Hiroi comments on the differences he has found between writing for theatre, where he worked with his own company he founded before joining the 14 team in 2014, and for video games. He feels that theatrical scripts are often written in such a way that push the creator's individual ego to the forefront. When it comes to the game, there's already this umbrella of Final Fantasy XIV, underneath which there's an existing player base with their own expectations, so the starting point is very different. I can imagine that, actually. Oda and Ishikawa commented on how they see Hiroi's work. Oda says he is grateful for having the opportunity to move up to a management role of the entire scenario team. It does have a reputation as being behind the scenes role, but it's actually the most important for delivering patches on schedule. Ishikawa says he's a hard worker and mediates between all of the team. It's good to know. I mean, a team, you know, sort of team aspect is important, isn't it, really? And I don't think they've got a very bad team there at all. I think they're, you know, well-trained at this point with the storylines they've dealt with. Hiroi comments on what he'd like to focus on as a lead story writer moving forward. He says the flow of the emotions of the characters, their sadness and joy, and how this touches the player. Also, how the player's emotions change by the characters. This is the kind of thing he's done in his theatrical career previously, and it's a point he's particularly focusing on here on out. He adds here that, quote, I'm writing while saying I'm so sorry to the characters, end quote, and he laughs. Oh, don't kill off our characters. This isn't Game of Thrones. No. Oh, I'm sure that's going to be many tearjerkers to come. And honestly, the game's better for it, right, story-wise. Hiroi also comments on his work on the Pandemonium storyline. Since Laha Brea, or Laha Bread as I call him, is a character everyone already knew, he wondered if he should go quite so far. But at a certain point, he decided not to hold back, and it ended up quite close to what he originally intended. He says this is the sort of direction we would like to keep up in his future writing. Oh, wow. So, no holds barred, let's just create lore. That's the best way, honestly. Never be afraid of throwing a brick through the window of expectations, I say. It was Yoshida's idea to give Laha Brea voice lines in Abyssos, first bringing back iconic character voice actor Ikeda Shiushi. Sorry if I butchered that. He suggested it several times during the writing boot camp. Well, it was a good thing to do, I think. It really, really added more to the character. Ishikawa says, while there are trade-offs to do with costs and such, the developers would like to give Themis more voice lines in the final part. I can't wait for that. That's awesome. Oda confirms the third Encyclopedia Eorzea will cover Shadowbringers and Endwalker. He also adds that he wants to write in the book about how the people of the world of 14 reacted to the recent events. So yeah, a big hype point for me personally, and probably a lot of you, is the Encyclopedia Eorzea. It's the most physical representation of the lore, being into a compendium of everything you could ever want to know. Now, it doesn't scratch every itch, but they're working on that, and I'm really excited to see what they come up with in the next one, because they're, you know, full of illustrations and diagrams and artwork and concept stuff, and then you've got storyline related stuff and the backstory of dragons. Oh, it's such a good read. It really is, if you're a lore nut. Ishikawa comments on the side quest she's writing for 6.3. She says it's not necessarily something she's had requests to write about, but something she herself wants to touch on now she has the chance. She says not to worry. We will immediately know what she means when it is announced. Oda adds that it's something he's quite a big fan of. He says, it's like, oh, I see, this person has come here? End quote. Hiroi adds it's something only Ishikawa could write about. Very interesting. I full of speculation as to what that might be, honestly. If you have any ideas, leave a comment. I'm curious now. Maybe Unhalkai, or whatever his name is? Don't know. Who could it be? Very interesting. Hiroi comments on people's worries that Oda and Ishikawa have left their positions of main story writers. He says that now they're supervising, that they have passed on their experience across the scenario team. Addressing people who are worried about him taking charge of the main story, he assures that Oda and Ishikawa are still on the team, and he's taking up a relay baton from them. The greater division of labor between multiple staff on the scenario team is also leading to interesting developments in 6.1 and 6.2, he says. Oda says that the new variant and criterion dungeons have close cooperation between game content team and the scenario team, since NPCs are involved in the dungeons. There's two things to go off of there. Basically, people shouldn't be afraid of change, especially with the people that are entrusting this to, obviously to this person. All things have to change eventually, and sometimes it's better to have multiple people coming in and writing stories of things, because you never know. That's why I like guest writers on like television shows, because sometimes they're like incredible. Sometimes they're a bit meh as well, but you can have some really very different takes and visualizations of things that you didn't know that you wanted until you have it. So I think this is a great opportunity, really. A bit of fresh storyline writing is interesting. And 6.1 and 6.2 have been certainly interesting and fresh. In terms of the variant and criterion dungeons, I mean, obviously with variant dungeons, that's basically like your storyline mode. So a lot of the dialogue that the NPCs will be, the NPC will be speaking to you, in this case, Nanamo, is all going to be very lore related. And since there are multiple paths through those dungeons, decided upon by the player, that affects the way things go out, I imagine the amount of dialogue required for that is quite high. So I'm really excited about those, actually, especially Criterion with its Savage modes. It's going to be really fun to have 4-player difficult stuff to do with my friends. And finally, we have the sound team. There's only 2 bits from this. Imamura says that he was entrusted with composing Scream, and Sokun asked Akino to do the vocals. It turns out Akino actually wanted to take part in a Final Fantasy project. Oh, that's cool. And finally, Sokun says that P8S Part 2 theme is the track that left the biggest impression on him from 6.2. The avant-garde vibe is a genre that hasn't seen much in 14 so far. End quote. Honestly, I'd like to hear so much more from Sokun, honestly. Like, so many different genres are already present in 14. It always makes me wonder where we're going next. It is a roller coaster of emotional, sort of sonic, soundscaping. I love what the team does, and yeah, it's nice to know that not a single part of the Final Fantasy XIV development team is going half measures. They're all going like full on, and sometimes you really do have to smash eggs to pieces to make omelets, you know what I mean? Some things might not be to everyone's cup of tea, but this is how you get groundbreaking game evolution. And 14 has never been afraid of a big challenge and to challenge itself. Even if it ends up apologizing for segments later, ultimately, I think they're the most progressive in the industry. And that's why Final Fantasy XIV is probably, unequivocally, the best MMORPG on the market at this point, and probably has been for the last, however many years. But anyway, let me know what you think about these points. There's some really nice bits, honestly, to go and read through. I'll link this in the description of the video at the top. Thank you once again to Mkillerby. Thank you so much for watching this stuff. I know some people complain about long videos, but how else am I supposed to read things to people? Just simply don't watch the channel if you don't like long videos. I don't know what to tell you at this point. Much love. Enjoy the rest of your day. Hopefully this was interesting. Wherever you are, safe journeys, and I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye.